Hello and welcome back to Simple Time Studios, where once again we will be returning to Psion Novastar in Ecumenopolis of Mystery, Part 6. Please enjoy. Psion Novastar continued his descent down to the second floor of the maintenance tunnels beneath the city park. Slowly climbing down the metal staircase, he arrived at a small room barely big enough for the stairwell and a small, empty storage closet. A single door leading out of the room was in front of him. With his solar lamp still in hand, the smart field researcher ambled up to the door and listened. He wasn't sure what he was listening for, but after his brief encounter with the robot, he realized he needed to be a little more careful in case he met something that didn't want to be disturbed. Alright, does Psion hear anything on the other side of the door? I don't see a need for a roll since nothing should be actively stalking him. So I'll just add the Oracle and 50-50 and 84 says no. Hearing nothing behind the door and his stout nose, not picking up anything unusual, the stout Ursan explorer pushed the door open. On the other side of the door was a very large and strangely circular room with a pool in the middle. Stagnant water made the room's original purpose hard to determine. Was this an aquifer that had gone rancid due to a lack of maintenance, or a wastewater storage unit that hadn't been emptied in a while? Okay, Psion is going to make a perception check to see if he notices anything. That'll be a 1d20 plus 4. And I get a 21. And according to the Book of Lost Tables, when I rolled up this room, there's a siren in this pool and some treasure. The treasure is worth 500 gold in a ceramic jar trapped with a gas trap that has a lethal save versus poison or die gas in it. I probably should get back to running stars without number with the Book of Lost Tables to make some of these conversions easier. The faint ripple of motion on the pool's surface caught Psion's eye, and the shape of a ceramic object half submerged in the water beckoned to him temptingly. Was it floating, or was the pool shallower than it looked? Still, it was clearly inhabited by something, so Psion saw no reason to stick his foot in the water to find out. It also did not escape his notice that the safety railings that would have been around this pool were largely removed. Not rusted away, but obviously removed, like someone had ripped or cut away the railings. Not sure what to make of the strange situation, Psion turned to look for another way out of the room. There was only one other way out, another sturdy metal door all the way over on the opposite wall. The sensible idea would have been to ignore the pool and circle around to the other door the best he could, but part of him was curious about the object in front of him. Leaning forward as carefully as he could without falling in, Psion reached down and pulled the floating jar out of the water. It was a clear ceramic jar with a lid that was screwed on just too tight and designed to float on water and release chemicals over time. It was also surprisingly heavy, like it had something inside of it. The part that was supposed to be under the water and release chemicals was absolutely caked in filth and completely clogged. Remembering his chemistry and what happens to certain compounds when they become gaseous in an enclosed space, Psion chucked the alien chlorine pool float back into the water and rose back to his feet. With nothing else, he continued on through the next door. The door opened into another room, a large square one that had been used for chemical storage at one time, likely to treat the storage pool in the room behind him. There were two other ways leading out of the room, one on the left and one on the right. Both of them sturdy metal doors starting to rust from the ambient humidity in the room. The 4 massive storage tanks, one in each corner of the room, were empty, the last of their contents having emptied ages ago, with only a thin residue of chemicals remaining. Psion looked at the empty room and pulled out his pocket computer to scan for ambient chemicals. Okay, Psion makes a natural sciences check. 1d20 plus 7 to find and analyze any chemical residue in the room. He gets a natural 1. I guess this fizzles out his scanner function and forces him to reboot it. I'll make a computer's check to reboot it. Another 1d20 plus 7, and a 24. So he reboots it successfully but doesn't learn anything. The moment he activated his pocket computer's scanner function, he must have picked up some kind of interference since the scanner crashed and reported an error message. With practice motion, Psion Novastar quickly rebooted his pocket computer and put it back in his jumpsuit pocket. Interesting, but even failure can sometimes lead to important observations. Was it just a glitch, or was something deeper in the tunnels generating interference? And why? Putting these thoughts to the back of his mind for now, he went up to the left door and opened it. On the other side of the door was a corridor that seemed to go on at least 30 feet before the light of his solar lamp reached the inky blackness of the underground. Apparently the lighting was non-functional in this part of the maintenance area. Stepping through, Psion slowly ambled down the hallway before coming to a 4-way intersection. Raising his solar lamp above his head and looking down each direction, he decided to turn left again and soon walked into a small, vaguely rectangular chamber with a door to the left, and in the center was an enclosed stairwell taking him down 2 additional stories. Psion could barely make out the entrance to a corridor at the bottom of the flight of stairs. Making a note of this for now, Psion elected to backtrack to the intersection and go straight through. The corridor soon made a sharp right and took him down another short hallway that ended in a dead end right outside the chemical storage room. Is there anything of interest at the end of this hallway? I give it a 50-50, and the Dice Oracle says no with a 93. The hallway dead-ended at a small control panel that looked like it was for the storage tanks in the next room. Age and erosion made the console illegible, and the stout scholar couldn't see how one would be able to observe the tanks in the following room. The wall appeared to be solid, and it didn't look like the console had a projector similar to what he had observed upstairs, but clearly there had to be something he wasn't seeing. With nothing more to see, he retraced his steps back to the intersection and made a right down that hallway. This last hallway also made a sharp right before heading down 30 feet past the edge of his solar lamp. Psion continued to amble down that hallway before coming up to a door right at the end of the hallway. Opening it, he found himself looking into a very small square room, roughly 10 feet to his side. Inside was another door on the opposite wall and a large pile of junk in the center of the room. Another bipedal robot emerged from the pile and rose to its feet. Turning its metal head towards Psion, it stared at him with unblinking electronic eyes as time seemed to slow down. Is the robot hostile? I give it a 50-50, and 20 says yes. Alert! Unidentified person detected. Please present identification. The autonomous machine shouted at Novastar with a burst of electronic static. Psion considered the situation for a second and responded by shutting the door to the room and quickly moving down to the end of the hallway. That wouldn't hold for long, and it looked like he wasn't going to be able to talk or think his way out of this one. Okay, and now we start combat. I'm going to use the stats for the drone robot security from the Intergalactic Hero rules, since that seems like it would make the most sense. It gets a 13 on its initiative, and Psion gets a 10. Robot goes first and uses an action to open the door and another to enter the hallway. Okay, Psion draws his survival blaster and attacks. He gets a 20 on a 1d20 plus 5, which hits, and does 10 damage on his 1d12 plus 3. The robot has 9 HP left. Okay, taking a blaster round squarely to the chest and seeing that Psion is not cooperating, the robot draws its stun baton and moves down the hallway to chase after Psion. Back on his turn, Psion fires off another shot from his survival blaster. He hits again with a 16, and he does 7 points of damage. The robot has 2 HP left, so I'm just going to give Psion the kill instead of make the two chase after each other for another round. Psion had drawn his survival blaster from one of his utility pouches, a simplistic energy weapon originally made by the Sol Federation for downed human pilots. The design had since made the rounds among Orion Commonwealth explorers as well. The weapon powered up with a soft, reassuring whine in Psion's gloved hand as the ancient security robot opened the door with a deafening slam. Psion took the opportunity to lean around the corner and fire off a calculated shot. His ability to calculate angles compensating for his lack of physical dexterity, he hit the robot in the upper torso and damaged it with a furious shower of sparks before ducking back behind the corner. Despite being heavily damaged, the robot drew a long baton crackling with electricity, then marched down the hallway to take a swing at Psion. As his opponent turned the corner and readied an attack with its shock baton, the Ursan explorer squeezed off one more shot and hit the robot squarely in the head. Decapitated, the mechanical guardian fell over and landed on the floor with a mighty crash. The fight was over. As the robot's smoldering husk fell at his green boots, Psion exhaled. Well, he is more of a realist than most Orions when it came to violence. That didn't make it any easier or less nerve-wracking. Still, the obstacle was removed, now to explore further into the ruins. Psion walked back down the hallway into the small room where the robot had stood idle. The room was fairly unremarkable, just a small bottleneck for the complex's mechanical security to ambush people who were not supposed to be down here. Definitely something he would have to document and make the others aware of back at camp. With nothing else to inspect, the smart field researcher walked over to the unopened metal door and gently pushed it open. The door opened to another small, square room, unremarkable except for a massive reinforced bulkhead to Psion's left, and a control terminal near the middle of the room and the remains of what looked like a guard station. Psion could think of a couple reasons for such a door, from security to environmental regulation. All of them potentially interesting and dangerous. Making a mental note of the bulkhead, he backtracked to the four-way intersection and headed back down to the room with a stairwell that went down 2 stories. There was a door there he hadn't opened, and it would be good to explore the rest of the area before he left it and headed deeper into the underground. The deeper he went into the complex, the greater the risk of getting lost in the tunnels. A few minutes of walking later, he arrived in front of the metal door. With a gloved hand, he gently pushed on it to see if it was locked. Okay, is the door locked? I give it a 50-50. And 92 says no. His luck continuing to hold, he opened the door and found himself looking into a small empty room that looked like it was once another break room for the workers that once maintained this city. Weathered furniture looked usable, and while he was skeptical of the appliances, Psion knew that the power supply still worked well enough to recharge his equipment. Good to know, but he still had at least one more door to explore in this area. Backtracking further into the chemical tank room, Psion opened the untouched door and found a small mixing room for the chemicals that were once stored behind him. Nothing but ruined machinery was in this room. The only purpose the equipment here had left was as scrap material or as ruined archaeological artifacts. Standing in the last empty room, Psion considered where to go next. He could go down those stairs, deeper below the surface, or he could try to get the bulkhead open. Though as he thought about it, he hadn't collected a water sample from the aquifer. He could try to collect a sample without provoking the creature that seemed to dwell in it, then return to the surface and report his explorations while analyzing the water sample. It had already been a long day, exploring as much as he had already did. Updating the base camp in case something happened would be a good idea. His decision made, Psion backtracked towards the aquifer. His pace slowed down as he entered the vast circular room and carefully ambled his way around to the other side of the room. With a staircase behind him, Psion took out a specimen container and knelt down to get a water sample. Okay. Is the life form living in the aquifer aware Psion is disturbing the water's surface? I give it a 50-50, and 84 says no. Psion makes a perception check to see if anything is trying to sneak up on him anyway. And a 15 on a 1d20 plus 4, that works. Psion looked up at the pool of water and found it perfectly still. While the stagnant water was too cloudy to make out what the creature was or where it was, or even how deep the aquifer was, there was no sign of it moving or disturbing the water. Filling the sample container, he quickly sealed it and made his way back upstairs. Cutting quickly through the equipment garage on the level above, Psion soon climbed the stairs leading to his base camp set up in the old groundskeeper's concrete hut. As soon as he arrived, he shut the door to the staircase behind him and began to run the water sample through his analysis equipment. Okay, Psion makes a natural sciences check to analyze the water. And I get an 11 on a 1d20 plus 7. He succeeds in processing the sample, but doesn't get a lot of immediately relevant information besides confirming what he already knew. Hooked up to his analysis equipment, his pocket computer began tabulating the results. It was exactly as he expected. Water was untreated, and the samples showed signs that something was living in the water, and that some kind of stable, if fragile, ecosystem had formed in there. How was a question for another day, and perhaps even another explorer, but clearly there was some sort of connection to the wider city, somewhere down there under the water. Novastar reviewed these findings and reviewed his map of what he explored so far against what the base camp had on file. It was all new territory. He had been the first being to see any of that in an unknown amount of time. Seeing this, he uploaded all his findings to Oracle and went to make sure he was still safe. Once he was certain both doors were secure, he fell asleep in the groundkeeper's old break room. Tomorrow would be another day, a day he would have to make a decision about where to explore next. Down the stairs, or try to see if there was any life left in those bulkhead controls. Who knew what secrets were behind either passage? End of session.